Hey everyone, Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the 5 Yard Rush Mock Draft 2.0. That's Adam Murfitt, that's Ben Isaacs. You may remember him from a previous podcast. Boys, welcome to the draft room. How are we doing?
Living the dream. You know, I mean, I was meant to be in Las Vegas covering the draft with ESPN. That was the penciled in plan. But instead, I'm in my bedroom and I'm talking to you guys on lockdown. And I think that's probably for the best, right?
Absolutely. I was going to say, my plan was to sit here and do a podcast with Stocks, and we end up with you. So we're ahead.
Yeah.
you might be miles behind, but we're ahead. So yeah, we'll call it a draw. We'll wash it across the board.
Sure. Balancing the weights.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's an exciting mock this, and looking forward to getting through it all.
100%. Well, you've heard all the audio. You've seen all the picks. Let's dive into the analysis, and we'll start with Joe Burrow at number 1 to Cincinnati Bengals.
I mean, not much to talk about here. It's probably been the most mocked quarterback to team I can remember in the last decade or so. Every year there's always been some sort of question. I guess maybe Jared Goff to the Rams was pretty early on. So not much to do here. I think it's a locked on pick.
Yeah, he's not the best player. He's not even the best quarterback, but this is still the right pick at number 1 because the Bengals need a guy who's a winner. They need a reasonably safe pick, even though he's possibly a game manager. He's had one of the greatest seasons in college football history. There's not a whole lot to go on really, but if the Bengals didn't take him, and then he had a fantastic career, this would be used as a stick to beat them with forever. Sensible pick, and it's hard to disagree.
A high character guy. He comes in. He's good with teammates. Really believes in a teamwork ethic. Gets behind everybody. Even if we all expect him to start opening day whenever opening day is, but let's say in an alternate universe he doesn't for whatever reason, he has to sit a couple of games. You know, he's going to be fine with that. He's a good guy to have around the locker room, and he's going to, I think, have a good NFL career. How great, we'll find out, but I think at least he'll be a solid starter in this league for years to come.
Yeah, I think his success and failure will be more down to the Bengals than it will be down to him.
I completely agree.
Right then, with the second pick, pretty much the same as Burrow. It's Chase Young to the Washington Redskins. This one as well has been pretty much mocked to death.
Best player in the draft. You know, some people say, oh, maybe Washington should trade down and get a boatload of picks. No, they should take Chase Young. He's the most talented guy on the board. Just do the sensible thing. Take him and have a massive upgrade. I think he's going to be a perennial All-Pro if Washington don't coach the talent out of him.
Absolutely, and I think the fact you've got Ron Rivera there, I think this is almost like a match made in heaven to have someone like Ron Rivera coaching someone like Chase Young. You know, I think it's someone that's really going to get the best out of him. I think if we'd had Jay Gruden there still, you know, debatable as to what might have happened, but I think this is a home run pick, and yeah, mocked to death, and rightfully so. If anything else happened on the night, then Dan Schneider needs to. Well, I don't know what Dan Schneider needs to do. Yeah, I mean, he needs to anyway. But let's see what happens. But yeah, home run pick for me, easy as the day is long.
And then at number 3, the Detroit Lions select cornerback Jeffrey Okudah. I really liked our chat with the guy who came on and did the other mock draft the other day, Murph, who said that the Redskins should take Okudah over Young.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I mean, there's some logic to that, obviously, given the fact that when it comes to, you know, edge rushers, and Chase Young is one of the 3 they'll have there, whereas they're more deficient at corner, but I don't think you can refuse the best player in the draft. Whoever's with Okudah, I mean, so with this mock draft, there's no trades. I fully probably expect Detroit to cash in here and to take advantage of the quarterback situation behind them. So I don't necessarily expect them to be picking Okudah at 3, but if they slide to 5 or 6, I think that they definitely will, and he feels the hole that has been left completely behind by Darius Slay. Although there's a lot of talk now of Henderson sliding up boards in the last few days, but whether that's lying season, who knows?
Yeah, he's nobody seems to be getting talked up more than CJ Henderson right now, but Okuda is definitely the pick at number 3, and I think the Lions should stick with Okuda rather than trade down. I don't trust them as an organization to make the most of those picks lower down. Okuda's the second out of all the players in the draft. He's the one I've got the second most confidence in after Chase Young, of just being that guy, that Pro Bowler, that reliable shutdown guy. And what a night for Ohio State if this is how it goes. Burrow started at Ohio State, Chase Young Ohio State, Okuda Ohio State. They're clearly doing something something well there.
Absolutely, and they're not going to be the only Ohio State players picked in this first round either, so or any ties to them at all. So I think it depends what happens with Miami and what Miami want to do. I think if they move from 3 to 5, I still think they get Okuda, and I think if that's the case and you get a few extra picks, then what's the harm? I think if you're right, sliding past 5 or 6, I probably wouldn't do it, but I fully expect them to probably go down to 5 or 6 and get and still get Okuda. Barring some kind of catastrophe or the Lions, the Giants doing something completely irregular. So,
Talking of the Giants, let's go to the Big Apple, and they selected Isaiah Simmons,
Now,
former safety linebacker, everybody.
in February, Jack picked Jerry Jeudy in this position, and I don't blame him necessarily for taking Jerry Jeudy, but we're going to see that it's a very deep draft for wide receivers, so you don't need to kind of blow your wad immediately. I love Isaiah Simmons. Technically he's a linebacker. He's super fast. He can play multiple positions. I think this is the pick the Giants should make. But again, they're going to be in the same situation as the Lions. They can trade down and potentially still get Simmons, depending on who they trade to.
I just don't trust Gettleman to trade down. It's just not his sort of thing. I still think that they should go offensive tackle here. I think the fact that you've made the investment in Jones, the fact you've got investment in other players there, Saquon, for example, makes me think you should go tackle here, but it's not an eye-catching pick like Simmons is. And that's what the Giants do. Every draft, they always seem to, with a high pick, really get people talking, and they don't do what they quote unquote should do. They go for the player who they think is going to have star quality, whether you believe that or not. Saquon Barkley, Daniel Jones are great examples of that. They've had people talking. Isaiah Simmons, I think, will have people talking for the right reasons. You can't really begrudge the Giants taking a player like Simmons here because of just what he can do and the fact that he can play so many different positions and to a very high standard. So I know a lot of Giants fans who are confident they'll bring a tackle in, but I'm with you, Ben. I think this will be the pick on Thursday night.
Next up, the Miami Dolphins, and they select Shock Tua Tagovailoa. Probably said that wrong, but anyway.
No, that's good.
Okay, cool. Lee's pretty sure that this is going to be their pick, whether they trade up or not.
He's the biggest risk in the draft, but he is also the best quarterback. His ceiling is so high. We all know about the injury issues, and they were pretty catastrophic. He's not been able to work out for teams like he normally would have. This is obviously an extraordinary off-season, so it puts him in a difficult position. There's lots of talk where GMs have apparently said, "Oh, he doesn't have it, he can't do it," and I would take all that with a pinch of salt because lots of things are put out there to put off other teams from trading up. I wish I could say with some confidence that he will be durable enough, but it is any of us are just making a total guess. My guess is that he will be okay. And if he is okay, then clearly this is the guy for Miami to take them forward for their sakes, hopefully the next decade.
See, I kind of want to pour a bit of cold water on the decade stuff. Listen, he's got injury concerns. Do I see him starting quarterback until he's 35? Probably not. But I think you can get 5-6 years of elite production out of him as long as he's fit. I mean, even if you sit him for a year, you've got Ryan Fitzpatrick there. He will do you a job until Tua is ready to play. So I think these concerns, he has to be ready week 1. I don't think that's important. nor do I think the Dolphins are thinking of him as a 10-year pick. I think they're looking, if we can get 4.5 years of him, rebuild our franchise with all the picks that we've got over the next couple of years, we can build ourselves into a really good team. If Tua gives us 4 or 5 years of elite production and that's it, I'm sorry, most teams should be thinking like that. 10 years is just too long to be thinking, all the GMs aren't going to be there unless you're Bill Belichick are going to be there in 10 years' time anyway. So I think it's a risk, but I think you're going to get at least, he's going to play till he's 30 before these injuries really stop him. There might be that risk he doesn't play 16 games. He might miss a game or two, but I think if you're the Dolphins here, I think it's the perfect player for the culture, for the environment, the fact that he's so good with his teammates, the fact that he is he makes everybody better around him. And I think that's why you've got to take your punt on the best talent and don't worry about a decade. You can get
Well,
5 years, take it.
I'll add a caveat to that decade. The reason I'm thinking that long term for the Dolphins is because of the number of picks that they have at the top end of this draft.
Mm.
That this is a make or break draft for them because you don't normally get these opportunities. And I think whether you like it or not, if you're the Dolphins, you have to be thinking not just medium term, but set yourselves up for success for a long time. They're not just kind of plugging in some pieces here. They can rebuild through the draft, and that's how you do it well. So if they do this draft well, I think they are looking at a decade of success. Whether it's Tua under center for the decade, who knows? But I think this is how they can make it work. If the sky's the limit if they draft well this year.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they're not going to be winning the AFC East this year, but I think they can definitely get into positions in the next 2 years. Patriots decline. That division's up to grabs next year for me, and I think it's definitely something that they can do to move forward. They're really there's 2 pivot points in this early part of the draft: the Giants for where they go, and then what the Dolphins do, because I think that sets the tone almost for the next 10 picks. Because if he doesn't go to the Dolphins or the Chargers, Tua's sliding down this board, and I mean we're talking about. He's going into the teens, maybe even the late teens, and someone might trade up to get him. Because I can't see Carolina going for him, and then I can't see the teams afterwards who don't need a quarterback going for him. So I think this is a real pivot point of this draft after the Giants to see what really happens. And it's whether the Dolphins pick here at 5. This is the real story of the early part of this draft.
I'm just going to jump in here and say we probably need to pick up the pace on these, which obviously that isn't a criticism of anybody because I'm blabbering around myself.
No. These, I think, are a bit more easy to explain.
Right then, at number 6, the Chargers went with Tristan Wirfs.
He's not my favorite of the offensive tackles, although I've seen him mocked really high, like as high as 4th. It's a solid and sensible pick. I think he went 10th in the February mock, but no one wanted offensive linemen that night. It's like people forgot they existed. And the Chargers had Justin Herbert in that one, which is obviously an interesting pick. I can't, although, like I say, he's not my favorite offensive tackle. It's a solid pick, and I'm not going to begrudge the Chargers doing that.
No, he's flexible. He can play left tackle and right tackle, which I guess is half the appeal to the Chargers there. It's just to get someone on that offensive line to protect, whether it's Tyrod or whether they bring someone in free agency. So I don't hate it, but I'm with you. I don't love it either.
At 7, the Carolina Panthers took Derek Brown.
I like him. I like this pick. He's got a good motor, really kind of competitive, kind of aggressive guy on the field. I think it's a nice fit for the Panthers. In the February mock, it was Okudah. Obviously, Okudah is not going to drop as low as this. I would hope not anyway. So personally, thumbs up for Derek Brown. I think that's the sort of guy they need on defense in Carolina.
I agree, especially with losing Kuechly. I think he becomes the de facto leader of that team, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Maybe not in the first few games, but similar to what the Buccaneers had to do last year and draft Devin White, because they need that leader, they need that communicator, someone who's going to get up. And Brown possesses a lot of leadership qualities, so I fully expect him to take that role on, especially some of the older statesmen of that defense are going to be moving on in the next 12 to 24 months.
At 8, the Arizona Cardinals also took an offensive tackle in Jedrick Wills.
This guy's my favorite offensive tackle. This is just an instant upgrade. Just makes them so much better on that line. Will make everything easier. He's a plug and play guy. This is another team that in February's mock draft, it was a wide receiver, which isn't great value at pick number 8. So this to me is a good call. This is a good use of a number 8 pick.
Yeah, and also at this point, don't forget the trade for DeAndre Hopkins hadn't happened yet, so it might have been a bigger need in February than it is now. I like Jedrick Wills a lot. A lot of people are very critical that he can't play left tackle. I don't quite understand that, because effectively he was playing right tackle at Alabama. He was protecting Tua because he's a left-handed quarterback. So I don't quite understand, it's footwork and technique that might need a bit of work. But if Nick Saban says he can play left tackle, that's good enough for me. And the fact that he was essentially playing that role, I'm not worried that he can play left tackle in the NFL. So you've got that flexibility there, I think, as well.
Yeah, agree 100%.
At 9, the Jacksonville Jaguars took Javon Kinlaw, and this was the first move that made Denver's night an absolute misery.
He said he'd like to be a 49er. But I really don't think that's going to happen unless they really trade up, because I think he's a top 10 talent, explosive, has all the tools to be an elite guy on Sundays. I think it's a really good pick.
Yeah, I took him in the February mock at 14 for the Buccaneers. This was before we knew for sure that Sue was coming back. In fact, I wasn't confident he would, due to maybe the cost of the cap and what they were going to do in free agency at quarterback. But they did bring him back at a reduced rate, which made sense. Probably not as much of a need, but I think even so, the Buccaneers would consider at 14 with no tackle, they would probably go Kinlaw here and just take a year, rotate him in, and then maybe let Sue go next year. I'm with you, top 10 pick. Love his attitude, was great at the Senior Bowl. I know he didn't play in the game, but he really dominated those early sessions, and he's going to be a star as long as he can keep healthy in the NFL for years.
Then at 10, the Cleveland Browns went and got their guy, an offensive tackle, Andrew Thomas.
And this is the guy who I picked when I stepped in to do the Colts pick in February. And I think the Browns had Wirfs last time. I probably prefer Thomas, so a slight upgrade as far as I'm concerned. But there's not a whole lot between Wirfs and Thomas, and it's a good pick. It doesn't get much less glamorous, but it doesn't get much more useful.
I think this is a great pick for the Browns, because they're looking at left tackle here, because they've signed Conklin as the right tackle in free agency. They've given him a 3-year deal. They're looking at Thomas to play left tackle. Of these 4 guys, I think he's the one that you could probably say is the safest bet, and definitely is the safest floor at left tackle, given the amount of times he played there for Georgia and against the teams that he was playing against in the SEC. So this for Cleveland, I completely love and understand. If he'd been there at 14, he's the guy I would have picked for the Buccaneers for sure.
11, back to New York and the Jets, and they select Jerry Jeudy.
Here come the receivers.
Yeah.
Jerry Jeudy to me is he's the most talented and exciting offensive player in the draft. Because there are so many great receivers in the draft, a lot of people, it's almost become a bit trendy to say that Jerry Jeudy isn't the best receiver. I disagree, but there is a lot of talent there. I think he's the next Odell Beckham Jr., but without the potential character issues. He may even be the next Randy Moss. He's so athletic, so talented. I absolutely love this guy. And I think he'll be a hit wherever he goes.
I go with that. I think for me, he's my 1B. I think I'd rather have the person who goes next off the board, only because I think, as much as I think he's an excellent route runner, I don't think he's quite as good as Lamb. But I do think he's an exciting player, and the Jets to give this kind of weapon to their quarterback and Sam Darnold, and I think they're going to have a lot of fun, especially when Gase eventually moves on and they finally know how to use Jerry Jeudy.
At 12, the Las Vegas Raiders select CD Lamb.
I do love CD Lamb. I do prefer Jerry Jeudy, but that's no knock on CD Lamb. If Jerry Jeudy wasn't around, I'd be raving about CD Lamb. He was absolutely exceptional last year, but he plays in the Big 12, and there's not a lot of defense being played there. So sometimes you feel like you can't fully judge these guys, but I mean, look at the likes of Patrick Mahomes. So I've got a lot of confidence. He seems like a great kind of classic Raiders pick. I'd like it if he was a little bit faster, but his kind of skills with the ball are as good as any receiver that's come out in the last few years. He's a clear number one receiver straight out the gate.
I think he's a classy route runner, probably the best route technician in this class. And I think he just catches everything you're thinking about. Big wide receivers like Mike Evans and DeAndre Hopkins that just gobble everything that goes anywhere near them. And I think that's where Lamb is. And you're right. I think the pace is probably the only thing he's not going to necessarily take the top off. But I think if you put anything up there, he'll go and grab it. And for someone like Derek Carr, who gets knocked quite a lot for not being the most exciting quarterback, the one thing he is fairly accurate with the ball. I think this is a great matchup for them. And even Mariota, if Mariota ends up taking the job off Derek Carr, I think for either of these quarterbacks, he's a great addition. And it's what the Raiders need, someone who can actually run these routes, run them hard, run them perfectly, and make plays, which is what Lamb's going to do.
Yeah, he's DeAndre Hopkins 2.0, as far as I'm concerned.
100%.
At 13, the San Francisco 49ers take Henry Ruggs, ending the trio of receivers off the board.
God, the 49ers need a wide receiver. Like, if they had Henry Ruggs the third in the Super Bowl, they might have won the thing. He is almost as good as the other two, just not quite. And that sounds like it could be a criticism, but it's because the bar is set so high by the others. He is just, he's really versatile. He's a smaller guy, but he's strong. He's a game changer. He's a good route runner, although he's clearly not up there with CD Lamb. He's fast, like really fast. I mean, I love the guy. I think he's going to be a real weapon.
I'm not probably as high on Henry Ruggs as probably most people, but I think at this landing spot, if I trust any quarterback to really get the best out of a receiver, I trust Kyle Shanahan and his schemes to really utilize his speed. You get too many times, you get these guys who test quick, who run fast and look amazing, and very rarely do they pan out. For every Tyreek Hill, there's a John Ross and a Marquise Goodwin, for example. So I think if you put him here at the 49ers, this will give him every single chance in the NFL to succeed and be a properly good player. I think if he ends up somewhere else, for example, let's say Jacksonville or maybe even the Eagles, I don't necessarily trust that usage as much as I would here at the 49ers. So I think for Ruggs, this would be the dream pick for him to fulfill his potential.
At 14, via the Cannons, Murph, this one's you. It's Tampa Bay, and they selected Mekhi Becton.
What
Yes.
a disastrous pick. What clueless person would make no, someone to protect Brady. It sounds ideal. I'm gonna let you talk more about this, but I think this is a no-brainer pick.
Yeah, I mean, there were some concerns after we made this pick that the failed drug test that came out, and that points to some character issues that, if you're going to get stoned before the combine, that makes you actually really question the guy's character before the biggest job interview of your life, for example. But the one thing about Becton is he's massive. He's got the biggest potential of any tackle in this class. I mean, he's 6'7". He's going to take two guys to tackle, and he's going to immediately disrupt and just create a lot of time. He's going to create massive holes in what is effectively a defunct run game and has been for the last 4 or 5 years in Tampa. He's going to create big holes, but also he can just do so much of him. He can play on the left. You can really use him to protect Brady. And I think the fact that he is a bit raw, I think pairing him with Brady, someone who can get the ball out quick and can recognize any potential problems ahead of time, having that experience, he's not going to show up Kinlaw's deficiencies early while he's just adjusting to life in the NFL. So I think it's a good marriage because it could, if he landed on a team with a rookie quarterback, it could dent his confidence if he lets too many sacks go by or too many plays happen behind him. So I think having Brady there is going to massively help him to fulfill his potential and get to what could be the best tackle in this class, if in the right scheme and if with the right coaching. And he sorts those ridiculous character issues out, with the drug tests, etc.
Yeah, sometimes young players will do something stupid, and you're right. It is basically ahead of a big job interview, and that is the time to just be sensible. But sometimes the pressure can just get to people, and it does potentially show character issues and kind of like a lack of judgment. But he's still growing up, even though he is massive.
I mean, he is absolutely huge, and he will disrupt a lot of good defensive lines in that NFC South.
At 15, the Denver Broncos selected cornerback C.J. Henderson from the Florida Gators. Another one for you there, Murph.
Yeah, so why don't you talk about why you picked him first, and then we'll get into it.
So I picked him at 15 because all the receivers had gone, Kinlaw had gone, and we have 3 glaring needs. Obviously, inside linebacker. We do need an offensive tackle as well, but I don't think that's quite as serious. Now we made some free agent moves, and I think with a receiver, I think we might trade up actually draft night and get one of the big 3 receivers, because I think that's where John Elway really wants to go. But we do need a corner to partner AJ Bouye, and I think we get the no-fly back by getting Henderson. Bouye, got Simmons on the tag. Hopefully, get a deal done with him as well, and then I think it really solidifies the secondary at Denver, and I think it's a really solid pick for a big need.
Now, in February, you picked Laviska Shenault. What made you go off him?
Nothing made me go off him. I just recognized that there's a deeper talent pool at wide receiver because I've done more research between February and now. I mean, my love for Laviska is still there, and if for some reason CJ Henderson's gone, I've got no qualms in them taking him at 15. And I think he's a bit too similar to Courtland Sutton, really, but I think my man crush on him is slightly shading my view of taking him. The Broncos won't take him, I don't think, because he's too similar. They need a field stretcher, really.
Yeah, I like Shenault. But to go back to Henderson, because that is your pick. I like the pick. I like him too. I like these scrappy cornerbacks. One thing I noticed a lot that he likes to kind of get in people's face after a tackle, even like a tackle he hasn't made. He likes to kind of go and kind of like jaw against someone like much bigger than him, which I like to see. But yet sometimes he would be making a tackle and would kind of like bounce off someone a little bit. So he's got things to work on, but he's very promising.
I mean, as a Gator fan who watches him week in, week out, I absolutely love the player. Definitely was a standout on that team last year. And, you're talking about every week he's going against a pretty talented wide receiver core, and he was shutting everybody down. He really looked good in the big games. He loves the big occasion. Yeah, okay, he gets in people's faces, and he's going to have to learn to not do that. He's going to get some penalties. He's going to grow up quick. But I think he's got the football IQ to do that, and also the actual IQ to do it. So I back him to be pretty successful. And as on Shenault, I also think he's someone that will probably slide into the second round now. And I think that the Broncos, with all their capital, if they really do love Shenault, and you're like, he's a little bit like Sutton, but if they did really fall in love with Shenault, they can use a little bit of that capital to move up in round 2 and get him and not put that round 1 pick in. But I'm with you. I think they trade up and go wide receiver round 1 if they can.
At 16, the Atlanta Falcons select Kayvon Chaisson.
I like him. He needs to add a bit of weight. He's just a little bit too slight for the position that he's playing. But if he bulks up, and let's assume that he can bulk up, I think he can be a terrifying edge rusher. I think he's got a high ceiling, and he's got work to do. He's got work to do. And like I say, that body isn't quite right, but he's got most of the other skills. He did a lot of damage for LSU last season. Was really kind of messing up a lot of Saturdays for SEC quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. So I think he doesn't have to go far from home. I think he's a good fit for Atlanta. they've got a lot of issues as far as I'm concerned on defense.
Yeah, I'm with you. The body size is a bit of concern. I do think he's a great talent. I do like who they picked in February a little bit more. I do like AJ Epinesa. For me, I think he's probably the second best edge. I know that's not where mock drafters or scouts have him, but for me and what I've seen, I prefer him. He's ready to go. He probably doesn't have the ceiling that maybe someone like Chason has, but I know that if you picked AJ Epinesa for the Falcons, I know day one you could put him in that line and he'd be fine. And that's almost effectively when you're picking in the middle of the first round is what you want. Someone who can plug, play, go, done. But I do like Chason. Think he's definitely going to have, if he can get the body right, the frame right, he's going to be a good player.
I'm with you. We might be the only two people who would definitely put Epinesa ahead of Chason, but I'm with you.
Yeah.
At 17, the Dallas Cowboys select safety Xavier McKinney.
I think this is the first time since pick 2 we've had a team stick with their February pick. McKinney, I think, is good. He's probably only my second favorite safety in the draft. And I'm not sure why you would want to pick McKinney ahead of Grant Delpit personally. I'm a big Grant Delpit fanboy. It seems that other people in this mock draft are not.
And I put myself in there. I'm not also. I'm worried about Delpit's tackling issues. I think McKinney is the safer play. I think Delpit probably has the higher upside if he can work on and get those tackling issues sorted. He's had 2 years to do it and hasn't, which is, I guess, my one question mark about him, because that was his big criticism coming off 2018 was could he do it? But back to McKinney, safe as houses pick. It's the only reason I don't see it happening for Dallas is I just don't think that's a Jerry Jones pick. It's a bit too risk adverse for me. I see them doing something a bit splashier. We know what Jerry Jones is like. I see them doing something a little bit more with this draft pick, because don't forget they didn't have a first last year because they traded it for Cooper. So I think they might do something else this time around.
Yeah, McKinney's not flashy. He's a really good safety who does all the basics right and is a really consistent tackler. And that just feels like, you imagine for Jerry Jones, yeah, but so what?
Yeah.
But, all the upsides would kind of be things that might put him off.
100%.
And at 18, back to Miami, and the Dolphins select Josh Jones.
I'm not thrilled with this one. Personally, I think Josh Jones is a bit raw and will really need to be coached up. He's got a high ceiling, but the floor is low. You might not improve him that much. Unlike the lineman already off the board, I think there's quite a fall off when you get to Josh Jones. I think he was inconsistent at times last season, but so were Houston in general. In my imaginary 10-year plan that I've just thought up for Miami, Josh Jones is not an integral part of that.
I'm with you. I think if you're going to go tackle here, and I totally understand the logic, I almost would have liked Ezra Cleveland or even Austin Jackson. I think for me, they're slightly better prospects. I think it is a bit of a reach, but given the capital that Miami have, as long as you're picking the right players, I don't necessarily worry about reach. I do think Josh Jones is a bit of a reach, though. I don't think he is necessarily the tackle I would want out of the ones remaining for Miami. I'd want someone who's a bit more flexible, a bit more durable, and Jones isn't that for me.
At 19, the Las Vegas Raiders select cornerback AJ Terrell.
Don't like this one either. Got to say, I think Christian Fulton of LSU, who's still available, is a better cornerback. In fact, Jeff Gladney and Trayvon Diggs may be better as well. When I think of Terrell, I think of the fact that he seems to just love grabbing wide receivers and causing pass interference penalties. Don't like it. I don't think he's a very good tackler, and he just gets too handsy.
I think if they'd gone with who they went in February and went with Kenneth Murray, I would have got that a lot more. I'm with you. There are far better cornerbacks in this class than Terrell. I think he gets a bit more praise because of the fact he plays at Clemson, but Clemson's schedule most years is ridiculous, and he doesn't come across that many good players. And when he does, he gets found out. So I think Terrell's a raw prospect. I wouldn't want to see him. I wouldn't want to see him north of 50 really in this draft. I think there's so many better players you could take, and yeah, I would have stuck with. If you're really struggling, I would have stuck with Kenneth Murray. I think that would have been a better pick and a more exciting pick for Raiders fans.
At 20, the Jacksonville Jaguars selected Justin Jefferson, wide receiver.
Another of the fantastic 22 wide receiver crop that I think is the best set of wide receivers to come into the league in a generation. He was so important in the postseason for LSU. He's a really kind of smooth runner. His routes are great. I really like him. He's got fantastic ball skills. He's competitive. Kind of down the field, he will make those contested catches. He seems to see things that the defenders don't necessarily see. And I think he will be a very good wide receiver for quite a while.
I agree, but I don't like this pick. I think when you're Jacksonville and you have so many needs, you can go. There's quite a few defensive line players you can pick here. For me, I think the glaring thing is that Herbert is still on the board, and I think if you're sitting here at 20, I think if you're Jacksonville, you really have to consider that.
Especially because it's not their first pick.
Exactly that. I understand passing at 9. I do get that. Looking at the teams behind between your next pick, you're worried about the trade up, fine. But at 20, if Herbert is on the board, I think you've got to put the card in there for him because first of all, you only have 2 quarterbacks on the roster, so you need a third anyway. And are you really sold that Gardner Minshew is the guy? I know he was a big sensation, but hey, we saw at Wembley that he's got a long way to go. And
he was a big sensation for about a month.
Yeah.
I don't think if Gardner Minshew is the answer, it's a pretty weird question. He's a decent, okay quarterback. If you're not going to build your franchise around him,
and that's what I mean. And I think if you've got a GM and a head coach that are on, basically they're 1 year away from losing their jobs. And I think for me, if you were to ask the question now, are you going to win more games with Herbert if you get the right tools in, or with Minshew? I'd probably lean Herbert.
At 21, the Philadelphia Eagles select cornerback Trevon Diggs.
I like it. It's an interesting group of cornerbacks this year, but he lets himself down with his tackling. It's not the first time we've said that of a player in the secondary. He's a big guy, but his movements are nice. He's good in zone, but the tackling is an issue. I feel he can improve. I've got a bit of a soft spot for him, but the tackling is obviously the glaring weakness. I think sometimes we kind of build up these Alabama guys, but they do play a tough schedule. They do come up against a lot of quality opponents, but the tackling has got to improve because that will cost him, his second contract.
I agree. I love the position. I'd have gone Gladney here. I think Gladney is just that. If you're talking about this is a playoff team from 12 months ago, and you could talk about how bad the NFC East was and all of that, and sneaking in at 9-7, ultimately you're a playoff team, which says you've got a lot of things on your roster, and they had a lot of injuries and still got there. I think you've got to take players who aren't developmental players when you're picking this late in round 1. And I think that Diggs could be brilliant, but for me, Gladney's ready to go. I'd have no concerns putting him in my lineup week 1 in a position that is just an absolute mess for Philadelphia.
At 22, the Minnesota Vikings select cornerback Christian Fulton.
I prefer Christian Fulton. I mean, I think I prefer Christian Fulton to Kenneth Murray, but there's not a whole lot in it. I think it's a good pick. I like a lot of those LSU defensive guys. He's so good in man. He's very patient. He waits to make those moves with the wide receiver. He doesn't find himself kind of caught out of position. he's very confident in his own ability without being too kind of mouthy and cocky. And he was usually dealing with the number one receiver for the SEC's best teams. So he's seen pretty much all of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think Minnesota, with this pick and their next pick, had an excellent first round, and I love this pick. I think it's a perfect fit for a team that really need a game changer in their secondary. So big thumbs up for me. I love this pick.
Yeah, I think if any team won this first round, it's the Vikings.
Yeah, I agree with that.
At 23, the New England Patriots select quarterback Jordan Love.
Now we're talking. Now we're talking. Someone swinging for the fences. Risky pick. Jordan Love, I don't know whether I love him or I hate him. He makes throws that not many players seem to be able to do on a consistent basis. But he also makes some absolutely appalling throws. Like kind of real sort of bad Jay Cutler. You know, like one of those, like, why did you do that? Or some of those interceptions that Brett Favre would throw, where it's, Brett Favre he gets excused, but Jay Cutler or someone because for obvious reasons doesn't get excused, and that's Jordan Love. It's a real kind of feast or famine. Now, if he does end up as a Patriot, then it's very interesting because obviously Bill Belichick won't put up with that sort of nonsense. And I think he'd probably coach it out of him. He's got all the tools to be an NFL starter, but he's also got all the traits that have him as, first round bust. So toss a coin on Jordan Love because no one can really be sure which quarterback you're going to get.
I think he drives Bill Belichick into retirement. I really do. I think if I'm looking at all the quarterbacks available here, you've got Justin Herbert. I like Jacob Eason over Jordan Love. I like Jake Fromm over Jordan Love. I'm just looking at all these guys and thinking, I don't understand Jordan Love's first round grade. He can make some throws that other guys can't. If that's the criteria that we've got in this standard of play in the NFL, I'm a bit concerned. I just think that this would never happen. I'd give it a 1% chance that Bill Belichick would go in on Jordan Love. And do you know what? If they do, and I look like an idiot in a couple of days' time, I'll take it. But I think for me, if you're going to go for that kind of risk, just go and get the passing leader from last season because he's sitting there on free agency, and you could probably get him on a cheap deal.
At 24, the New Orleans Saints select Kenneth Murray.
Well, he's your guy. He's your guy. He's. I don't know. He's someone who this evening I came into this recording liking, and you know how when someone really, really likes someone, you start to think like, oh, does he like him too much? He's really explosive. He's got a really good body. He's quick, despite looking a bit kind of bulky at times. He's tough. He seems to be able to see things quicker than the players around him. I do like him, but sometimes he'll make some strange decisions and find himself out of position. I don't know. I don't quite know if he's a first rounder to me.
I think he is, and I think on top of that, I think you're looking at New Orleans. They don't have many picks, but at the same point, they don't have many needs. The biggest one is linebacker. I think for me, this is an instant pick. I think from the moment Fulton comes off the board, they've pretty much written this card out. I think it's there. I don't even think they even think about it. If this board went the way it did, they're turning it in immediately. I don't think they're interested in anyone else other than linebacker round one, unless maybe Patrick Queen. That might be the only one that they might think about. And I could totally take the argument there, but I think they're going to be taking linebacker round one. I can't see them going any other position, and they've got the right amount of. They're in the right place to pick one.
Yeah, I think they are going to go linebacker, and he is the sensible choice at the position. it just feels that it's not the best player available. It's not the best value at that point, but it is a matter of filling a need.
Yeah.
At 25, the Vikings are back and they select AJ Epinesa.
Oh boy. Underrated edge rusher out of Iowa. I was excited for him at the start of the season. I was talking about him as being, kind of a potential top 10 pick back in August. Really kind of smooth guy. Got a lot of power. He's a brainy player. Um, he's really dynamic, makes a lot of sacks, forces a lot of fumbles. He manages to kind of do a little bit in the passing game as well, where he just manages to deflect a lot of passes because he's a big guy. I can imagine him falling to the Patriots and him just being turned into this amazing guy. He will be a really important part of someone's front seven next season. And if he is picked as late as this, and I don't think this mock is way off what's going to happen. I think the buzz around Epinesa has really started to fade away as some other players have become more trendy. He is just an absolute no-brainer pick and is huge upgrade for whoever gets him. So I don't want to see him in the NFC North. The Vikings, both picks in this mock, they scare me. I wouldn't want the Bears to be facing those guys.
I mean, amazing pick here. I with you, love AJ Epinesa. I think he's a great edge rusher. I think he's going to add a lot. And again, I just think this is a home run pick at this stage of the draft. They could have taken him at 22, and I would have gone, that's a great pick. To take him here is even better. Amazing pick. I think, winners of the draft for me easily.
And that's it, Rush Nation. Unfortunately, I have to slide down the corridor because I've got a video cast for CBS Sports talking about fantasy football if I was dreaming. But I do have to slide out. I'm going to leave you in the capable hands of Murph and Ben. Boys, this has been a lot of fun. We'll catch you down the road.
Definitely. Thanks for joining us. And we'll catch you on the flip side.
See you soon.
Bye, guys. Bye, Rush Nation.
Right, let's whiz through these then. So we're up to the Dolphins and Anton Winfield Jr.
Well, ahead of Delpit, no thanks. I would actually like to see Miami go offense here, if it was me. But he is a good safety. He hasn't got the burst that some players have had. His tackling is good, which, because of the guys we've been talking about, it seems like you should say that. Again, he's also one of these players who is just very competitive and will kind of like will bully bigger players than him. So I do like him. I just personally, I would want offense here for the Dolphins.
And I totally understand that, and I don't think you're wrong there. But I do think safety is a massive hole. I've just had to look at their roster and their depth chart because I actually don't know who the safeties were. And the safeties are Eric Rowe, Stephen Parker, and Adrian Colbert, and that's it.
Yeah, yikes.
So with that situation, I completely understand taking Winfield Jr.
Oh yeah. It's better than their second pick, I would say. And I do like it. I think he's got a lot of upside.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think he has got upside, but I think they need to take two safeties in this draft, and I think Anton Winfield Jr. will be a good player to add to that roster for sure. Right, moving on to the Seattle Seahawks. We don't expect them to make this pick, do we, on Thursday night? But if seeing as there were no trades, they've gone with Yetur Gross-Matos.
I wouldn't expect this. I mean, he's someone who he's very good with his hands. Kind of like sort of the whole hand battle that goes on in the trenches, because he's also got that really nice wingspan. I don't see him as a first round pick personally. I think he's someone who is going to get taken in the second. So yeah, I don't think this is going to happen.
I think talent-wise you agree, but there was a lot of buzz about him post-combine. There is some things I think need to be ironed out amongst bullying behavior. There were a few accusations, and there's things going through courts, I believe, around the fact that he potentially bullied teammates. We don't know the full details of that and not going to speculate too much, but there's a question mark there that definitely needs to be ironed out, and I'm sure teams will be asking. I'm with you. I think he is probably a second round talent, but do think he will get taken in the first round, because I think people realize how important it is to build the trenches, and I think someone will pay. I don't think this is a massive overpay, and given the fact that they have no Clowney, it makes sense, this pick. I think it just is a logical pick given what's there. Moving on to the Ravens, they've gone with Patrick Queen.
He impressed me at times, dropping into coverage. He wasn't kind of doing a lot of man coverage, but the way he would drop back, and he made some nice picks. He's a fluid guy. He's got really nice feet, such as kind of smooth movement. Fills gaps. He's got a lot of burst. I like this. I think he might be a better linebacker than falling as low as this suggests.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's had a lot of hype and a lot of talk. I think he'll do potentially quite well. I think he definitely will probably not make it this far down. But I do think he goes in the 20s in this draft. I think this position is not a lot to separate the linebackers here, and I think he could go to the Saints at 26. He could fall to here, but I think it's a good pick again. A very stacked roster with very few needs. Makes sense that they fill one with this pick. Moving on to the Titans at 29, they go with Isaiah Wilson here.
I'm not huge on this guy, partly because we were talking about handwork in the trenches just a minute ago. To me, he's an example of doing it badly. He is a big guy. He's got a lot of power, but if those hand movements aren't right, you're not going to be making the blocks that you need to make. His footwork also isn't fantastic, but it's the hands that bother me. But because of his size and power, I think he is going to be rated highly, and people will feel that they can teach those things. I'd be slightly worried that he hasn't quite got them down pat, even in the SEC. But there's a lot of talent there.
I agree. I actually just don't see Tennessee making this pick. I see someone like the Colts coming up. If this board had fallen the way it was, I can't see the Colts not coming up to get Herbert here. That just makes a little bit too much sense for me. Maybe even the Patriots, if they want to leverage their future and come and get the QB here. I just think Tennessee are a prime trade back candidate here. The kind of players they're looking for are going to be there in the second round, and I just don't think they're going to feel the need to pick here. Going with the Green Bay Packers, they are the ones that decide to take Justin Herbert off the board at 30, and this is, for me, this pick makes an absolute huge amount of sense, but I also can never see it happening.
Yeah, I can't see it happening. But it's like a nice little bit of symmetry. It's reminiscent of the Rodgers situation, where you would think Herbert would go earlier, and then falls to a team that's already got a Super Bowl winning Hall of Famer already there, who doesn't look like he wants to step away anytime soon, but gives you the chance to learn. Justin Herbert is, if this was 10 years ago, people would be saying he is the prototypical quarterback with his body, his build, and the way that he passes the ball. The NFL has obviously changed since then. That doesn't mean there isn't a place for somebody who is built like the traditional quarterback. He obviously didn't have a good season. His biggest issue for me is that if his initial target, his first read, wasn't there, things would start to go to pot, and he's got to get that kind of coached out of him. He does really feel pressure, both real and imagined, but he has got a lot of talent. He has got a lot of tools, and I think he could make a head coach very happy at some point. I don't think it's going to be the Packers, but he's got first round talent. It's going to be interesting to see where he ends up, whether he ends up at a team that has a need right now, that they need a quarterback for next season, or whether he can sit behind someone for a season or two. If you're in the position of, if you were kind of sitting behind Brady, for example, I mean, to me, that's the ultimate position to be in right now, because he's only going to be there for a couple of seasons, and you will learn so much. Ideally, for Herbert, that's the sort of situation he wants to be in. I don't think Rodgers would be that guy for him.
No, absolutely not. But you're talking about an academic Heisman winner, 4.0 GPA, incredibly intelligent human being in his own right, let alone the football IQ. I think he's got a lot of positive traits. Teammates love him. I think he's got a lot of great traits about him, and I think it's a shame if he'd come out in 2019, he would have finished higher up this board. I still think he's potentially a top 6 pick on Thursday, but even if he slides into the teens, he's someone who I think out of this entire process, I came into the end of the season thinking I don't want him. He's a bit too static. He's a bit too stuck in the pocket for me. He's not really the type of player I would want. And then I've seen him through this process. Great senior week, great senior bowl, great combine, showed his athleticism. And I think it was maybe more scheme that restricted him more than actually his traits.
And you know the head coaches are going to love the guy. His football IQ is off the charts as well as his actual IQ. So there will be coaches who think, okay, I know that I can work with this guy. He's so coachable.
100%. 2 more picks to go through. This one makes a ton of sense to me. The 49ers select Cesar Ruiz, which just for me just smacks of perfect team, perfect fit.
I agree. I would say if there's a criticism on him, I think he's overweight. I think there's a bit too much bad weight on him. I think he needs to be slightly leaner, and it'll make him a bit more mobile. And I think it'll help with his footwork, which is not quite there.
Yeah, 100%. And then the Chiefs round off by they stick with their pick from February and go Damon Arnett. I know that Ash, who made this pick, he's not a Chiefs fan, he's a Steelers fan, and he's also a Ohio State fan and loves Damon Arnett. That explains why he took him both times at 32. I think it's a good fit. I think there's probably a few players they would go here instead.
Yeah, I mean he's not particularly polished. He's not the finished article, but he is very physical. But he's got the negative trait that I've talked about before. I don't like to see these guys who just get very handsy with these wide receivers, and to me it suggests a lack of confidence in their own ability and just a fear that, oh, this guy is going to go past me. There's a bit too much grabbing going on, which is just not going to fly in the NFL. But it's not a terrible pick by any stretch of the imagination.
No, absolutely. And again, a roster of very few needs makes sense. Cornerback is one of those. I get it. It makes a resonant sense for me. But yeah, I think they'll probably go other ways on Thursday. Ben, been a lot of fun breaking this down with you. Thank you so much. It's a shame it's not Vegas, but I'm glad that you were able to break through. Sterling job as always. Why don't you tell everyone very quickly where they can find you if they've been living under a rock?
You can find me on Twitter most often. That's at Tweets from Ben. And you can hear me talking about my book, which is I wrote the book because no one else seemed to have written it. You can find more information at NFLHistoryBook.com. And as I always like to say, you can actually read it for free. If you've got Amazon Prime and the Kindle Lending Library, read it for free and I will still get paid. I get paid for however much of the book you read. So if you only read half of it and you don't like the rest of it, then I only get paid for half the book, which is probably fair. So I can't argue with that. But yeah, I'll be obviously talking my way through the NFL draft, all the rounds most likely. But I'll certainly be up all night on Thursday. So please chat with me. I'll be popping onto TalkSport 2 at certain points to do that. So yeah, hit me on Twitter. Keep talking, and we can all enjoy this lockdown by obsessing about the draft.
Absolutely. And, one thing you forgot to mention is you can be found on the Nat Coombs show as well.
I can. I just didn't feel he deserved the plug. Yeah, I'm a regular on the Nat Coombs show, which obviously is a fantastic ESPN podcast. So I would very much recommend that you subscribe to that, not just for me, but all the other fantastic people. I'm way down the list of talent that is a regular on there. I mean, it's worth it just for Mike Carlson, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've sold yourself a little short there, but I do love a bit of Iron Mike. And despite being a friend of the show, I'd put you slightly above Tom Deacon.
Well, now that's going to be a problem when he hears this. Okay.
Yeah, so he's too busy hosting virtual racing now. So
Yeah.
he's got his Sky gig now. He's too big time for the rest of us.
Yeah. Well, some of us are stuck with print journalism.
Absolutely.
Single-handedly keeping that alive.
Well, look, as always, it's been a pleasure. Rush Nation, hope you've enjoyed this. If you want to see the videos of the picks, some of them are absolute doozies. The backgrounds to people impersonating GMs, they're definitely well worth a watch on our YouTube channel, which you can subscribe to at 5 Yard Rush on YouTube. Don't forget to download the pod. We've got some amazing guests we've just had. We've got some amazing guests coming on. But until next week, Rush Nation, keep rushing.
This is a 61-yard field goal attempt.
I'll freaking give him my paycheck. I'll give him my game check. He makes it. Woo! Whoa!
Hold your breath. Ball is spotted. The kick is away. And the kick is... It's gone!